everybody, my name is Scheib. You've probably all seen me ask a bunch of questions. From my personal professional experience, this would definitely be considered a technical presentation. Of course, it's going to be in very broad terms. I spent many years directing actors, both for fiction, film, and theater, as well as doing documentaries. I have a play that's off-Broadway right now, actually. I want to talk today briefly about the nature of directing actors as a microcosm of creativity and communication. And what I mean by that is, when you're directing an actor, you want to ask yourself the question, I think we all wonder, what kind of a performance do I want to get out of this person, basically, is one way to think of it. Get out of this person is a little bit of strong language, but I think the key here is to look at directing an actor, and I'm going to argue actually interacting with anybody in any conversation or relationship such as this of me to you guys right now, as an opportunity for one person or both people to really express something deeply creative and honest of themselves. Because I think we would all agree, when we watch a performance by somebody and they're deeply engaged in what they're doing, they're so committed to the moment, and they're so feeling whatever they're experiencing in that performance, it feels real. So the question is, how do you get something real out of an actor? And a couple of techniques that I've learned and developed, and these are certainly not exclusive to me by any stretch of the imagination. You want to create a space where the actor feels like they are not being judged for anything that they may do. And I think we can all map this onto our communication and a creative process as well. So in other words, it's my goal as a director to provide a platform upon which the actor can do anything, say anything, be any way that they wish to be or that just so happens, and it will be okay. Because otherwise, I see Sean shaking his head over here because he's actually been an actor in LA for a few years, because otherwise, how is the actor ever going to get to the point where they either feel comfortable to really show their true colors, or otherwise get committed to some moment so entirely that they lose any self-consciousness of what they're doing and they're just so intensely in it? And those performers who can do that are the ones, I would argue, are the ones that we see in a lot of the best Hollywood films or on Broadway. These are actors that, no matter the circumstance, they can commit so fully to a moment that it's truly real. And at that point, acting is no longer acting. And this is a trick that a lot of people who are new to directing and acting, and a mistake, I would say, that a lot of people who are new to acting and directing make. There's no such thing, it took me years to learn this, but there is no such thing as acting. There is only being. And so the question is, how do you get yourself and the actor to a position, especially the actor, where they really are that character and they really are experiencing that emotion and that circumstance? So, like I said, a couple of concrete things to do. You really have to work hard as a director to make sure that you're not judging anything that the actor is doing, and that you also are providing a platform, I would call, it's going to sound a little gooey, but a platform of love, basically, whereby whatever the actor does, in fact, they feel encouraged, even if they make a choice that is not consistent with your vision for how you want the performance to end up. They still feel encouraged in their creative process, that they can be, that's 1 minute, that they can make any choice, and that's okay, because otherwise they're going to, and I think we can all relate to this, if you feel like others around you might judge you, or if you feel like you judge yourself, then when do you ever express yourself? And the actor is a really brave person who is willing to go there, and a director's opportunity is to create a context in which the actor can be anything and commit to that moment fully. One last final thing I guess I'll say is that I also directed a lot of documentary, and I think that this technique actually maps onto documentary directing in a really interesting way. So when you're in a really intimate situation with a subject, which is the nature of most of the documentaries that I've created, how do you get someone to really open up? Because the kind of film that I'm interested in making is one that is deeply emotionally engaging and powerful and transformative. I'm not interested in making like a bunch of talking heads.
Finish up, please.
So, the final point here is a couple of key strategies, and I think that these also bridge onto how to communicate with people in real life in a day-to-day situation, in which I would encourage everybody here, and I certainly am always trying to do this. And if you ever feel anything from me to the contrary, please let me know. But the two things that I would say are key takeaways here are listening. What is listening? A kind of sincerity of truly paying attention. That that the person that you're listening to can feel that you are really analyzing, and I use that term intentionally, analyzing everything they're saying and thinking about how it relates to you. Again, with no judgment. And also, sharing of yourself. Because I don't ever expect anybody whom I'm making a documentary about to share anything, let's say bare their soul, as we might call that expression, that I'm not willing to do myself. If I can lead the way for them to feel comfortable to share of themselves by sharing a very personal story of my own, and again, I think this works in regular communication, then it creates a safe space of non-judgment where the other person can come out of their hiding place and share of themselves as well. And what you really end up with, both with directing actors and with creating a documentary, is really powerful emotional experiences that translate onto film and onto the canvas of the film and then into the audience's heart. So, to sum it up, in the space of non-judgment, listening and encouragement, deep connection, and one's deep creative expression, all of this could be called a collaboration, and it all arises out of the willingness to create a space of non-judgment and love that we can truly, deeply connect and listen to each other. Thank you.
All right. What a way to start us off. Let's do a couple questions. Anybody? Any thoughts?
Yeah.
I think you hit everything on the head. That's absolutely true. To have any kind of growth, you're going to take a leap of faith. So even in coding, so if you want to have any kind of growth, you have to take a leap of faith. If I'm too scared that someone's going to judge me because I did it this way, I'm not going to take that leap of faith and do it. I'm like, I'm just going to go with the conventional way of doing it. So you'll never be able to go with acting the same way. So you'll never be able to grow if you don't take that leap of faith. So a safe house is what's like, you have to grow in an acting form. You gotta leave your judgment at the door. So you can't judge people out there because you have to let them take that leap. And that's why I think a great point that Jared said about how it connects to coding is the same way. I should be able to come to Andrew like, hey, check out my code. What do you think about it? I shouldn't maybe expect him to be like, oh, maybe dumb, man. Why would you do it like that? That's not,
Or definitely not.
Or in fact, also, totally. And in fact, if someone was like, that's definitely wrong, like off the bat, it just feels like, oh, well, I mean, was this about whether I knew or is this about us learning? You know, and like when you close someone off to the possibility that they can learn and you treat them as though they must already know, I think you get into a really dangerous position of negative feedback loop. Yeah.
Thanks for that presentation, Jared. I thought that was great. One thing I really relate to is when you talk about how the director is responsible for creating that safe space. And when I think about how I react in life, oftentimes I'm my own director.
Totally.
And I am not creating a safe space for myself.
And
So that was, just remind me that that's my responsibility. And I'm able to do it, and I don't. And as a result, I feel constricted, and I'm not showing my true self. So I related to that.
Totally.
And also with coding, I notice it when I'm in the assessments, I get that way too. Like I feel stressed, and I'm being my own negative code pair in my own head.
Totally.
And then I shut down. So it's just great to hear that, and a great reminder to something that I can probably use a reminder of every morning.
I really appreciate that, and if I could add, the way I tend to frame that type of thinking, and I thank you so much for saying that, we have a feedback loop in our own head, and we are self-talking all the time, whether it comes out as words or just a feeling or whatever. And I really, really, really deeply think that the foundation of any healthy relationship starts with a relationship with yourself. And in that relationship with yourself where you love yourself, and I mean that sincerely, I know it sounds kind of silly sometimes, but I really sincerely mean loving yourself. That no matter what you do or say, there's always a way forward. And if you don't let yourself come out of that shell that you feel constricted within, you won't really grow. That's kind of a operative fixed mindset, I would say. And the key to a growth mindset is to be willing to let yourself mess up. And even if others judge you, to not listen to that, and to always understand that I can keep growing, and I love myself.
Well, the last one.
How do you make the transition between listening and creating open space without judgment and providing constructive feedback?
Great question. So, I like to disambiguate the term judgment into two different terms, or two different concepts. We conflate them in our vernacular, but I think of judgment, and the way I'm using it in this presentation, I appreciate this, I should have clarified. I use judgment to mean in the loaded sense that we know it, like negative judgment, like biting, like you're wrong, you're bad, whatever. That type of baggage, like very, the term that carries a lot of baggage. Whereas we also mean judge to mean like making a decision about something or assessing. So I tend to just relegate the negative connotated one to the word judgment, and I use assess, which is kind of, I think in our vernacular, not a loaded term, as a starting point for how to think about this. And then, so to your question of how do you provide constructive criticism of something without coming across as judgmental, I think it's definitely, I think the most important thing I could say there, and I could speak about this for hours and hours and hours, so I'm always happy to talk to anybody about this. I'm certainly not a master of it myself. I think we all saw, I've had a couple of communication issues already here, but I think the most important point, even if you didn't learn or didn't know anything else, is that that type of behavior or response or whatever, interaction, is 100% something you can learn through hard work and the willingness to do so. I used to be an extremely judgmental person when I was younger. Like, thought everybody was a total idiot and made them feel that way. And that's one of the reasons that I'm, out of a desire to like really connect with people instead of just making them feel like crap. I've learned a lot for myself, at least, that's been helpful. And so I'm just here to say, if nothing else, hard work and awareness of how you approach people and really trying to listen, like emotionally and intellectually, to how people respond to anything you may say is one of the first steps to doing that, and the willingness and the belief that you can. It's totally achievable. But as a practical matter, I think a couple of key things to do, and these are common things that you can look up online as well, there's a lot more to it, is like, when you say something to me, and I want to give you constructive feedback, first of all, it's important to acknowledge that I've really heard what you said. Not just because I need to do that as a functional thing, but like I need to understand your perspective. And once I understand your perspective, just like we hear in the lectures, when someone asks a question, they don't jump down our throats and make us feel like shit because we didn't know the answer. In fact, they look at that as an opportunity to say, okay, I see where you're coming from. Now, let me ask you a question that might help you, because I'm really excited about where your head's at and this growth journey that you're on, and how you can make this even more efficient code or even more effective behavior or whatever you're criticizing. It could be outside of code as well. And so I think that's key. And then just being very aware, and this takes a lot of practice and cultivation. I'm certainly getting not a master of it. To use terms that aren't loaded as much as possible, to make sure so maybe this is the last thing I'll say, because there's so much more to say here, but suffice it to say, one key practice you can implement is the following, and I think this would work for a lot of people here because we're programmers, we're software engineers. I found it very useful so for a long time I've gotten the feedback that my tone of voice is really negative, and I come across like I'm an ass, basically, and I'm sure a lot of you have observed that. And I've worked a lot in my life to not have it come across that way, but inevitably it still does. So what I started to do was actually meta-communicate as a buffer to all my communication. So in other words, I would say, literally, I understand that what I'm about to say tends to come across to people like I'm judging you, and I sincerely am not trying to judge you with whatever I say in the following. I'm only trying to convey constructive feedback because I really want to help. So you like totally intellectualize as a preface, to your content, and then you say, here's what I think. I think blah, 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 blah. If that came across, and then you can ask at the end of that, did that make sense? They say yeah or no, and then you keep explaining. But let's say they say yes, then you can say, did that come across? I hope I didn't convey anything negative by that, or did I convey anything negative? And people, you'll start to get a sense, but you see what I'm getting at. Like, you can help yourself, and it actually takes the pressure off of you as well by meta-communicating about your intentions, and then checking back in with the person at the end of it. And the last little, cherry on top is to try to always be conveying a sense of gratitude for the other person. In the sense of, like, even though you're providing feedback to them, like, you're sharing this moment, and you're both alive, and, like, this is a great question, and we're here to work together, and, our goals, hopefully, are both, love and reconciliation or whatever. Like, my goal is not to put you down and be better than you. So, hopefully that's some practical stuff about, I'm happy to take more questions, but thank you guys very much.
All right.